So without objection, it's 12:35. We'll bring this meeting to order. Without objection, can we approve the agenda? And because of the agenda, is there anybody here that has to leave early due to obligations?
I've got to leave punctually.
Punctually? Okay. So no changes necessary to help
I
with
don't
that?
have any.
Okay. So without objection?
So I would move we approve the agenda.
Got a motion?
That's a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody get a chance to take a look at the minutes that were sent out via email? If not, take a second and let's review them real quick.
You missed an interesting meeting.
Yeah, good meeting.
I would move that we accept the minutes as written.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Introduction of visitors and guests. Would you like to do a self-introduction? Because I am flatly incapable right now to introduce you other than Mrs. Goodman.
Sure. I'm Diane Goodman, and I would like to make public comment today as an advocate to make our government better. I specifically was, I don't want to say too much, but I was exposed to some things that I think need to be addressed as a result of one simple little problem, which is that I've got a systemic, my car by me has a systemic leak problem, and it turned into this snowball of some issues that I think need to be addressed, and so I'm here to share that and see if we can't come up with ways to make our government more efficient, more effective.
Sounds good. So we'll come to that bullet point and then you'll have a few minutes to do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Tell me your name one more time.
Charlie.
Charlie.
Harrison.
Spell it for me. Charles or Charlie?
Charles.
Harris. How you spell it?
A-R-A-S-I-M.
Okay, and you're with Diane?
We're friends, yeah. But this is something I do. I'm kind of a citizen photojournalist, and I do have press credentials from Photography is Not a Crime.
Well, nobody said that. I'd just like to know.
That's the name of our outfit, though.
What?
Photography is Not a Crime.
Oh, okay.
PNAC for short.
I'd just like to know who's behind me.
Sure.
Me too. Appreciate that, right? Are you with me? Thank you. Just kidding.
We have two more.
Two more, yes.
Jordan Veer, City Forester. I was asked to attend, I think, in relation to the request to rename the park because I had piped up with the Dominion.
Glad to see you here. Doing a great job, by the way. Really like what you're doing.
Thank you.
I have heard so many positive things about you. It's almost...
I have great agents out there in the field for me.
No, but personally, he's also very, very responsive to questions. I had a personal experience, and it was excellent.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Wow, nice job. And Mr. Reed, are you considered a guest today?
I can be.
Who else do we have that's...
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And Gary, of course.
I work here. I'm not a guest.
So under general testimony, Diane, you wanted to have a little time?
Yeah, I don't have to swear under oath or anything like that,
No,
right?
you
Since
don't.
it's testimony.
No, we
Very
do.
informal.
You got her.
Good enough.
So,
So we do have limits. There's usually a time limit to it. It's
Okay.
usually about 2 minutes.
Okay.
How does that suit you?
that'll be fine. I've got actually a package here to submit as part of public records so that anybody can get access to that. I can also send an email to anybody that would like with this information in there. So anybody that would like the email, please let me know, and I'll send this to them too. But I'll submit this as public record. So I would like to first say, well, the first issue that I discovered just yesterday was that the meeting's agenda was not posted on the city's webpage for this board meeting until yesterday. I talked with Jane about that. I think Jane had tried to get it posted within the 72-hour time period for the OMA, Open Meetings Act, but it did not get posted.
It was posted at City Hall.
Yes, but well, if you look at my comments, you'll see what the Open Meetings Act said, because I've got that included in my comments. So it is supposed to be recorded on the website if there is one within 72 hours, just to let you know. But it started out with I have a systemic weed problem at the City View Estates Park, and so I had tried to go through the normal process of talking to the supervisor, and that whole process has turned into a multitude of problems that have come out because of it from a management perspective. And so I would like to say I did file a complaint with Rob Perry, and he referred it over to Mr. Riordan. Mr. Riordan, in emails, which are part of these documents, has stated that he would get back to me. Barbara Taylor also, I've been interacting with her. There's emails in here stating that she would get back to me. They've ignored my emails. They've made commitments in emails. They've ignored my emails. But ultimately, the bottom line is that they've not responded. Certainly not appropriately, but I don't have an answer yet as to when we can expect, well, even acknowledging that there's a systemic weed problem, which is obvious that there is, but that when it could get fixed. So they had done some research, and Mr. Riordan had done some research and used the 311 system. I would like to say that through this process, I discovered there's absolutely no reports that come out of the system, the manual system. Right now, Yardi is, as you probably know, Yardi is going to be implemented, which is an automated system. But there's no reports that come out of the system. They use the 311 system, which is very reactionary. In other words, you wait until a lot of people complain before you try to do something about it. It turns out that system, the 311 system, doesn't work as per internal audit, that they close complaints without even resolving issues. So it's not even a reliable way to get reports. But they do not get any reports related to vehicle maintenance. They break down a lot, as I found out, and you'll see in my notes and my emails here, but apparently the vehicles are breaking down a lot. They don't have any kind of maintenance schedule or reports for when vehicles are, when they need to be maintained, let alone inventory, supplies. There's no reports on inventory, there's no reports on supplies. There's no reports on parks what the issues are that need to be addressed. And if I am incorrect, it is disappointing in that too, because I had done an IPA request for this, and I was provided no reports. And in fact, it was stated in emails that there's no reports. So,
excuse me, Ms. Goodman, is all the information that you're going to be telling us, which I actually put 3 minutes on there, is that included in the paperwork that you're going to submit to Jane, which she would disseminate to us as an advisory board?
You're asking me if I have I have the evidence in writing as far as being able to address these issues. Do I have the documents from the IPA request? No, they were literally 20 boxes of work orders only. There are no reports coming out of the work order system. It's only pieces of paper on work orders. So I don't know why they haven't done an Excel file, for example, which could be maintaining it. But I guess what I'm asking for, in order to not go past too far, because I do appreciate your graciousness, is that somebody should investigate this. We should get some answers, and I would be happy to participate in doing legwork to solve these problems. I think that we should be treated with more respect. I think citizens should be treated with more respect. I've tried to cooperate. I've offered to come up with solutions and participate in organizing those solutions, you'll see in emails, and I just get ignored. It's like they don't really want to fix the problem, or I don't know, that's something we'll need to, I guess, work out. So I'm available. I'll leave these records with you. I guess, Jane, would you be the person that would?
Absolutely, I'll give them to the board.
And then, feel free to contact me by email, by phone number.
Is it all in this document?
It's, my contact information is in there. And, let me know what I can do to help address this, because I personally don't know with a $17 million budget for the parks, which is just for the parks itself, how you can not have any reports to manage to. I mean, I don't even know how that's possible to do that. And you'll see by the emails that Mr. Riordan used the 311 system as his resource, and it's just, I think we need to become more. We need to. There's a lot of improvement in management. I've had experience with. Many years with a Fortune 100 company and managing a department, and I'm just blown away, quite frankly, that they could have survived for this long without reports and coming out and being able to manage to something. So I'm here to help, and I'm just volunteer my time, not looking to get any accolades or whatever, resume builders. This is because we need to do this, and I want to do what I can to help.
Well, thank you, Ms. Goodman, for being here today. I'll leave it up to the pleasure of the board. Does anybody have any questions, Ms. Goodman?
What was the name of the park that you mentioned?
City View Estates Park.
And where is that?
It's between Copper and Lomas, east of Tramway. It's a real pretty park, and it's got nice, you can see the city lights, and it's real nice when the sun sets and everything, but there's a systemic weed problem there that it's worse than I've seen in.
Has that been going on every year, or is it just?
No,
okay.
it's what happened is, like, around in 2009, 2010, they stopped maintaining it. Like, I think we were trying to be more efficient with our tax dollars, and so they weren't cutting the grass as much. There were, it wasn't picture perfect like it was before. No problem, I understand that. We need to be careful with our money, that's fine. And so each year it's gradually, there's things that have deteriorated, but that's okay again too, but I mean, there's things that need to be painted and stuff like that, but the weed, most of you, I'm presuming, have homes, and if you have homes, you know that once you get weeds and you mow over them, which is what they do, then what ends up happening is you don't have grass anymore, you have weeds, and we're getting to that point where we're getting into, it's becoming more weeds, and the clover, although it does appear that they've been doing something, but they haven't shared it with me if they have. But the clover is just systemic, and there's even areas where it's just all weeds, and they're just mowing over it. And it's, it's just time to address that problem. But then it turned out there's all these other problems too, so just wanted to share it with you today.
Does anybody else have any questions, Ms. Goodman?
And I think I know you. Didn't you used to work for the U.S. Agriculture?
The Extension Service.
Yeah, and I met you one time. He is excellent. He was excellent over there too. So.
Yeah, we're pretty pleased.
Yeah, we're lucky to have him.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Ms. Goodman.
Thank you.
I'm sorry you experienced all these problems.
Oh, that's okay. Problems are good because then you get to work on them, right? And there's room for improvement. We get to see progress. So I look forward to that.
No doubt. We have a request to rename Urban Forest Park. Next up on the agenda. Was this supposed to be somebody that came in from this place that wanted to be put on the agenda to bring this to our?
No, this is an internal request. Would you like me to address that?
Please.
So we met out with some neighborhood representatives about the overall maintenance of the park, and it came to our attention that there had been a historic name of the park that is still recorded on some mapping systems. So for instance, if you put in the park on Google, it comes in with a historic name versus urban park. And so that has created some confusion. So our suggestion is to go back to the historic name and then leave Urban Park as the beginning or the end of the name. And what is how do you pronounce the historic name?
Miraceros.
How do you spell that, Jordan?
Miraceros, I believe. Miraceros would be view of the hills.
Yeah.
So the the girl with the Hispanic last name can't say it. But, so the request is to name it Miraceros Urban Forest instead of just Urban Forest. And what that does is it brings some continuity in terms of naming on mapping systems, as well as still identifying it as an urban forest and not a typical neighborhood park.
Where is this from?
Are you familiar with the Netherwood neighborhood?
Oh, sure.
So if you go into that neighborhood, it's directly adjacent to the sound wall. So similar to Tom Bolak Urban Forest, which is up a few.
Uptown.
Right. So it's that same kind of facility, mostly trees, native plants, some walking trails, tables and benches. So not turf, not a typical neighborhood park. It is an urban forest, but by putting that specific name in front of it, it clears up some of the confusion.
How did it ever deviate from Miraceros? Because nobody could pronounce it?
I believe that park was named that way, and when I-40 went through, the park went away, or at least a good chunk of it.
I believe that's correct. It was maintained as a typical neighborhood park prior to that, I believe, and then became an urban forest setting. And the thinking is kind of, since we have the Tom Bolak urban forest, we kind of have this model of an urban forest park, which is not a typical park. And by keeping that urban forest part of the name and just inserting the place name in front of it, the Miraceros, then we can easily distinguish it from Tom Bolak urban forest, but also point out the similarities between the two through the name.
Sounds good, and it's consistent.
Makes sense.
So, just one question. I mean, do the people, who's the point person in the neighborhood? Have you talked to them?
Yes, and the neighborhood had no objection, and some of them do refer to it as Miraceros Park anyway. So really, it's just to provide some continuity, and the way we do our inventory is that we record historical names, or otherwise known as names. So, for instance, Hidden Park is really McDuffie Park, but we identify it as both. So we would just continue, we would change the name within the inventory, but identify that it had formerly been known as Urban Forest.
Very cool. Are there any other questions for Christine? Thanks for keeping us abreast.
Sure. So, were you all in favor of?
Was it finalized?
Well, no, we're asking you to
I see.
approve our recommendation for change
Yeah,
of meaning.
because the last time we had this request, we did it instantaneously. There was no,
Yeah.
I thought that there was a waiting period. I thought in our rules that we had set it, but that's not true, so we can do it today.
Is that's fine. I think we just do it. But is this just because you're just adding the historic name to the current name?
We're just trying to be consistent so that anytime we're changing the park inventory that we come before you so that it does go through a public process, but we have already spoken with the neighborhood. It wasn't a request generated by the neighborhood, it was generated by the department, but we're just trying to be consistent.
And we make a recommendation, right? We don't have the decision.
Yeah, we have no authority really.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, let's discuss it, I guess. Is anybody not in favor of doing this? All we're doing is just coordinating two names into one?
Seems to make sense to me.
It's kind of outside of a real name change. It's just correcting.
It's already on the maps.
Yeah. It's nobody's asking for a deceased person to be named. I mean, it sounds really simple to me.
Very straightforward.
Does anybody have any objections? So shall we endorse a letter and just sign it and say go for it, just because we talked about it? I mean, does not make sense
We
to
make a
do.
motion to recommend that the park be officially so named Miraceros Urban Forest.
Yeah.
So moved. Did you get that?
And if I might, just because I'm not familiar with the process yet, being fairly new, Christina, at this point then, what do we internally need to do to finish off that act?
So we'll notify the neighborhood association, and then I'll notify park management to redo the sign, and then I'll take care of the
And then that's
internal
that.
inventory.
Sweet.
We'll have to coordinate with Aegis.
Mhm. And the counselor's representative was at that neighborhood meeting, so they're also aware of the request.
There's no difference in opinion there.
No.
So we have a motion, you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ted. Without objection? So moved. That was a no-brainer. You got any more like that? Mr. Wolf. Sorry, Gary. You're
Call
up.
me Gary.
Just
Call me Gary, Mr. Chairman.
No, please.
Hey, I have a brief report on what's going on in the department, and I'll try to go fast. I'll start with aquatics. The summer, from an aquatics point of view, is half over or halfway through the summer, however you want to look at it. One of the exciting things that's happening this Friday at 11 o'clock, if any of you are available, the mayor will be presenting an Employee of the Week award to a group of our guards from Eisenhower Pool, which is one of our seasonal pools up in the northeast. They pulled a young child out of the pool that was, I believe, having a seizure, and helped save a life, for lack of a better description. They did what lifeguards are supposed to do. So this Friday at 11, the mayor's going to award about 5 or 6 of our lifeguards with an Employee of the Week award, 11th floor in the mayor's conference room.
What time? 11:30?
11 o'clock, 11 a.m.
What day is it again?
Friday,
July 10th.
yeah, what she said. For those of you who are swimming today, Montgomery Pool is closed because they're having a power outage up in that area at Montgomery Park. I don't know what's going on with that, but until the power comes back on, pool's closed. For Alex Kiska's Recreation Division, we just completed being the landlord for the July Freedom 4th event. Preliminary estimates, 60 to 65,000 in attendance over this past weekend, and things seem to go pretty well. The Recreation Division's bike folks hosted 250 bikes at their bike valet. So for those of you that are planning on going to Freedom 4th next year, if you ride your bike, we'll check your bike for you, and we'll get you out of probably about hour and a half to 2 hours of sitting in traffic waiting to leave the park after the fireworks are done. And for those wondering, have we started planning this year's Balloon Fiesta in conjunction with the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta? And the answer is yes, so that planning's in process. Golf Division, this past weekend, the Golf Division hosted the men's city tournament at our 3 large golf courses, Ladera on the west side, Arroyo del Oso up in the northeast heights, and Los Altos. So they started at Ladera this past Friday and finished at Los Altos. The field narrowed from about 114 golfers on Friday to about 69 on Sunday. The really neat thing is we were able to get a whole bunch of pretty good golfers back over to our west side golf course after 2.5+ years of renovations at Ladera. So that was a big deal. On a sad note with golf, we're having problems with our well at Los Altos Golf Course. And about a month ago, the well started pumping out a whole bunch of sand, gravel, and debris. So the well dates back to vintage 1958. The course opened, of course, in 1960. So we're working with a very, very old well in the city of Albuquerque. We're at the stage where we've tried to vacuum debris and aggregate out of the well and the well casing. That attempt failed because of some type of blockage in the well or the well casing. Later this week, probably on Thursday, after we've had the opportunity to dump some fresh water into the well and sort of settle out all the debris and all the oil and all the gunk that's down there, we're going to send a little camera down the well and find out what's blocking the well. The worst possible case out of this is that we might have to drill a new well at Los Altos Golf Course. For those who are asking the question, is the golf course being watered? The answer is yes. And we're using access to a municipal supply, and there's a significant difference in the cost of water. So the cost of water goes from $47.10 an acre foot to a little bit over $250 an acre foot. Acre foot is about 325,000 gallons and a few extra in there. On any given day when we irrigate, we will probably, not day, we don't irrigate during the day, on any given evening when we irrigate, we probably put 3 to 4 acre feet of water on the golf course. So the price of water in one way or another is going up at Los Altos. And if you ask the question, how much does a new well cost? It would probably cost in excess of $1 million, and right now nobody knows where that $1 million would come from. Last note on golf, we do have a current request for proposal for operation of our West Side course, Ladera. That submission date is July 13th, so that comes up next week. And then we go through the process of looking for potentially a new vendor to operate the West Side Golf Course. In terms of open space, they're halfway through the summer. So summer's either half open or halfway done or halfway started. The biggest thing that happened recently in open space, they trained 43 Trail Watch volunteers, and those are Trail Watch volunteers that'll help look out for things that happen on the trails. They'll help look out for fires, etc., like in the bosque, and that's a big deal. On a sad note with open space, one of our recently retired employees, Tony Barron, I believe he was a 32-year employee with open space, passed away this past week, and I believe services for him are being held, I think, today. So that's kind of sad.
It was very sad.
With our planning and design folks, I'll be real brief. We had the opportunity to open 12 new tennis courts and playing field at Ventana Ranch, all the way up on the far northwest side of Albuquerque. It's almost in Rio Rancho. And the mayor and Councilor Lewis were out there this past Thursday, kind of doing a ceremonial first serve, either as a tennis player or as a pickleball player. So if there are any pickleball players in our group, we striped several of our tennis courts to accommodate pickleball up in the west side. So that was a good thing. The other thing that's happening with planning and design, for those of you that have not been out to Balloon Fiesta Park, is our contractor TA Cole is putting the finishing touches on the Sid Cutter Pilots Pavilion. So that's still on track to be completed by the end of August. That's it.
Does anybody have any questions? for Gary. Wolf.
With an E on the end of Wolf.
So when this Sid Cutter Pilots Pavilion is done, would we be able to have a meeting out there like we used to have at Carduno's on the Green?
It's really, really big. It's like a 12,000 square foot, huge, big room. Would we be able to have a meeting out there? Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
As soon as we get a certificate of occupancy.
Cool. Right in the perfect weather where it's neither hot nor cold, so we don't have to worry about heating it or cooling it. We don't want to cool it for us.
Definitely not. I nearly froze to death the last time we were out that way.
Thanks, Gary.
You're welcome.
Keep up the good work. Is it Christina now? Miss Sandoval.
Miss Sandoval.
Please.
So July is National Parks and Recreation Month. Our public relations marketing manager has been able to get us on Channel 13's morning show for every Friday in the month of July to highlight a division of the department once a month. So last weekend, Open Space went on and talked about their summer series up at Elena Gallegos. This week we'll be having the outdoor recreation group talking about recreation. Joran's going to be the third week talking about tree health and giving a demonstration on how to prune trees. They may be doing a tennis demonstration, and then aquatics is going to go out and discuss they have a new program for adults where you can sign up and they provide you workouts once a week. Twice a year they'll be having adult swim meets. So it's a way to keep swimmers, more engaged in their workouts and having a more varied workout schedule. So that's something that they've started. So that's a good way for us to get out what we do as a department, as well as just celebrating, being healthy and parks and recreation. So if you're up at 6:45 on a Friday morning, tune in to Channel 13. Last month, Judith Wong in our group gave a presentation on Los Altos Children's Park, which is going to be our all-inclusive park at Wyoming and Copper. And we mentioned that we were going to EPC. We did have our EPC hearing, and the zoning change and master plan were approved. So we are one step closer to getting that park into construction. We also talked last meeting about the dog park at Country Meadows Park, which is across from the Tana Ranch Community Park. You all endorsed changing the name of the dog park after Bud and his dog Lady, and that dog park opening will be this Saturday at 10:30. If anyone is interested in joining us, we would love to have you. At that opening, they're gonna have some dog trainers out there showing people how to use the agility equipment that's being placed in the dog park, and animal welfare will also be out there doing some pet adoptions. So it should be a nice event. The last thing that I have to mention is an effort that the planning department is going through, which is a revamp of the comprehensive plan as well as all of the zoning regulations, the zone code. And so Parks is participating in that effort in how it affects parks. So we're looking at, do we need a special zoning classification for park facilities? We don't currently have that. Will there be any impacts to parking requirements? Those types of things. So as more issues arise as to how that affects parks, we will let the board know. Things like lighting. When we're building a sports facility, we're using atypical lighting. So what kind of procedures will we have to go through in terms of EPC? Are those going to be changing? Some of those things are the things that we're having discussions with the planning department on. And we will let you know as that process moves forward what kind of potential impacts it will have on parks and recreation. At this point, the main issue that has arisen is, do we need specific zoning for major public open space and for parks? Because currently most neighborhood parks are built in R1 or residential zoning. Oh, so is that still going to be allowable within residential zonings, or will we have our own park zone designation? So we're meeting with planners next week to discuss that.
How far along is that process?
So there's two separate processes running in parallel. So the comp plan process, and Susan has been involved in a lot of these from a neighborhood perspective, so you know, if you want to chime in. So the comp plan process, they have given, I think, 2 presentations on updating that plan. And then the zoning process, they've had public meetings, so they've had 7 public meetings regarding the comp plan, 4 in each quadrant of the city, 1 in each quadrant of the city, and then 3 general meetings to talk about changes to the comp plan. And then the zoning portion, they've done kind of public information meetings, and then they're gonna also be doing more specific. So they're gonna have a meeting specific to parks, and a meeting specific to facilities and other types of things, neighborhood process. And
I assume this is an effort to simplify the zoning ordinance.
it is an effort to simplify. They're looking at the DPM and where that should come into the ordinance and what should be separate in the DPM. Basically, our recommendations have been that we are very confusing, that about 47% of the parcels in the city have an SU1 designation, so they're not actually zoned on a specific zone requirement. They're specific to their own property, which is very unusual. So they're looking at consolidating, having less zoning categories that are broader, so more things fit into those categories. But the concern of the neighborhoods is that they wash it down too much and that neighborhood identity is lost. So they're trying to grapple with that. And then the idea that we would potentially have less or do away with sector plans, because then that changes the zoning and then you have to look in multiple places to figure out what your requirements are. So it's a pretty complicated process, and you know, I'm involved strictly from a parks perspective, but it is all encompassing, and they're on about a 1.5-year schedule, so it's pretty aggressive.
Yeah. What they're trying to do is consolidate. Like, a lot of sector plans have the same policies in them, and so they're looking across sector plans and trying to consolidate them into what they call character overlays of these. So chances are your sector plan, or what's in your sector plan, wouldn't apply only to you now. It might apply to other people. And they say that they're not really changing the zoning in any of the neighborhoods, but they're just trying to merge some of it and make it less complicated.
It's a task.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. So why would the parks need a separate zoning code than the area that they reside in? Like if you're in a residential area, then I guess the park is zoned R1.
So typically for a neighborhood park, they're zoned R1. So, you know, Hidden Park or McDuffie Park or City View Estates have a residential zoning classification,
Right.
and parks are permitted use within a residential zone.
Right.
Where it gets a little more complicated is when you have these large facilities. So in Ventana Ranch, for instance, where you have, you know, multiple fields, you have large parking lots, you have sports lighting. Those we typically zone as SU1 for parks and recreation facility, which then requires us to go to the EPC so that there's some public process, so that the public's aware that they're going to have sports lighting, that, you know, there could be traffic impacts, those types of things. So the question is, you know, do we create a special park category for those larger park facilities? And then if we do that, do we kind of sidestep that EPC process, and what does that do to the public process? But potentially make it, you know, more consistent for parks in terms of this is what you typically see within a park facility.
So there would still be separate zoning for residential parks would still be?
We haven't decided that.
Yeah.
That's the question. So do you lump all parks together because a residential neighborhood park is quite different from the Tana Ranch
Exactly.
or a, regional baseball complex?
And what you can do in them is different too.
Right, and what, the impacts to the neighbors are different. And so some of those discussions need to occur. And then in terms of open space, the comp plan identifies future potential land acquisition for open space. And we've had some issues with takings when we've created open space tracts and plans and created a open space zoning designation, because then that devalues the property because it's not developable. So we have to be careful in terms of, how we're proceeding with that, so it's not viewed as a taking, but so that we protect the city's interest in, specific geological features that we want to acquire and maintain. It also becomes an issue of if we acquire property in one manner and it's zoned that manner, it's harder for it to become politicized later and for someone to say, oh, well, that's just open space, we can do something else with it. So those are some of the things that we're grappling with, but we also don't want to tie our feet to the fire and, create something that then creates problems down the road. So we're looking at those, issues. The current recommendation is to put parks and open space in a special use category, but that also falls under like mining and some other things that we're not really consistent with either. Or, like large shopping centers. So we're trying to find the right fit for us. What makes sense in terms of our uses and how our facilities are used, because, we do have large parking requirements, but they're not set by anything. I mean, if you have a square footage of a building, that sets how much parking spots you need.
Right.
There's nothing for parks that says you need so many parking spaces. But that's definitely an impact to neighbors and users. So how do we deal with some of those issues?
I think it's important that you have different levels of parks, though. I don't see how you're going to be able to just put them all together.
And I think my recommendation would be that we continue to allow neighborhood parks within a residential zone category as a permissive use. But we just haven't had that conversation with the people running the show yet. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Nordine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rest of the board, I apologize for not being here last month. I want to start off at Balloon Fiesta Park. May is probably our busiest weekend month in the entire year, with festivals and different things happening every weekend, whether it be the South Celtic or the Wine Festival. May is basically normally the biggest amount of time you see on Saturday and Sundays with big groups. We move from that. June becomes active, but not the same. July, as Gary already mentioned, has the biggest, outside of Balloon Fiesta itself, the biggest event on the park with Freedom 4th. And everything I heard also, just like what you said, went very well. And then it moves on. We have the park for another rest of July and August, and then it moves over to AIBF. They have control of it for the months of September and October. By the way, that has changed over the last couple of years. They used to have 3 months, and now they have 2 months. Inside the Gardenia of the Greens, other than it's called something different now, but that's how you referred to it a minute ago, it is booked now through the rest of this year. And that is still something that books all the time and is full in different events at any time. The Sid Cutter Memorial Building that he was talking about would accommodate this group very well. There'd be plenty of room to stretch out. It is a big building. It can be sectioned off into 3 different sections. It would be neat to see. I haven't been up there for about a month and a half. But it's going to be, as the mayor is trying to make the park a jewel of Albuquerque, it is going to be the jewel of the park. It is a very, very nice building. I would, if we do go out there for a meeting, I would have a drawing to see who can guess where the front door is. And if you don't smile at that, that means you haven't been there yet. But we were talking about that. It's built in a way that you really can't tell where the front is. But that means you don't know where the back is either. But it's a nice, be aware that when we go out there that you are seeing phase 1. It is a phase 2 or 3 total project. Only phase 1 is being built right now. But I'm looking forward to the finish unit, and it should be pretty, it'll be rented after Balloon Fiesta, it'll be christened at Balloon Fiesta. That's pretty much everything I have right now, other than sit for questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Bill Nordine? Thank you, Bill.
I know that's the fastest report I've given in a long time.
Well, usually I put you to the front of the list, but you weren't here.
Yes. But I showed up.
It's good to see you. I've been absent too, so. Subcommittee reports. We just go around the room. Does anybody have anything from their district? Members roundtable, we can just combine it really, those two.
Well, if you don't mind me adding a personal note. So my little munchkins, I have 3 kids, as most of you know, have been, they've attended tennis lessons. They've been on the swim team at Valley, and I just want to say that I am super proud to be part of this department, that, you know, the programming that my kids have received has been excellent. And you all might also know that my kids deal with some behavioral challenges, and Parks has been very receptive to accommodating them. So I just wanted to thank the department for the wonderful services that they're not only providing my children, but children throughout the city.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I have 4 requests. I just got a little report. The last meeting I was at, there was a lady here that was complaining about the dogs, the dog park. Mm-hmm. Was anybody out here? And she said she was in a wheelchair and she had issues because she couldn't evacuate. If she felt she had a problem, she had to have somebody with her boyfriend or something.
So I'm still working with animal welfare on that. It's been a little more challenging than I had anticipated. They don't typically regulate dog parks, so we're trying to work through that and get some better cooperation.
So I visited 4 dog parks in that area, and I don't know how anybody is going to, it's going to be very difficult. And I asked people, just walked right up to them and asked them, are there any problems at this dog park? And I identified myself as Dan Wilkinson, and that was it. They didn't care who I was. And they said, not really, no, but there's always somebody that comes with a few dogs that are aggressive, and it shoos people away, always. So it's not just one park. Mm-hmm. I think it's, I wouldn't say systemic, and I don't know what the answer is, because I asked him, what would you do? He says, well, you can't keep people away from here. One guy told me flat out, which I loved this comment, it's a dog park. And I mean, what do you say to that? When I showed up on my motorcycle, I'm walking around with a helmet, and the dogs come up and put some loving on me. I just love it, I don't care. But I could see how anybody that couldn't escape in a wheelchair would be really terrified of dogs coming up or those dogs terrorizing her dog.
And I did the same thing and asked the same questions. It's usually the non-neutered dogs that are aggressive.
Non-neutered.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I'm still working with animal welfare. You know, you're not allowed to have a neutered dogs unless you have the permit, but they typically don't regulate dog parks because it is a different circumstance. So the HART ordinance requires you to have a dog on leash, but in dog parks they're not required to be on leash. So there's already a situation created where a dog's behavior is different because a dog behaves differently on and off leash, and it's harder for them to, I guess, enforce behavior. So I am working with animal welfare to come up with a way that we can, you know, respect the idea that this is a place for dogs to recreate and roam free and have some different expectations, but to also create that safety for other dog users, other dogs and their owners. So it's an ongoing issue that we're working on.
So, and I'm glad you went too. You know, we're free to do whatever we want as members of this, and I will be visiting that. I'm sure others will visit City View Estates Park. I'm going to visit it before I read anything about what you've written, just so I don't want to be colored and see what I see. I've been to pretty much every park in this town for youth sports. That's not one known for youth sports. That's up there by the Rock area.
And you need to walk on the grass because from the car it looks green, but when you start to walk on the grass, you'll see that there's patches of green weeds. And actually, I think they've done some work because there was one patch that they did by copper that was turned brown all of a sudden. I was like, what the heck's going on there? And I went and I said, but they put too much emergent on there, and so it browned the grass. But what ended up happening in that patch is the clover is now gone and the grass is back. So I do think that they are working on it, but they have not confirmed that to me. But it's better than what it was, but it's still, you'll see, especially around the edges and stuff, it's, you'll see. So.
I wanted to ask a question about the other issue, the one on the wheelchair. Is there any signage on our parks that say aggressive dogs are not allowed?
There is.
Okay.
And there's other criteria, you're not supposed to eat within the dog park. There's a list of 8 or 10 rules, and we typically put them on a dog bone shaped sign so it kind of stands out. And
you see them before you walk in.
You do?
Yeah, and it's usually the younger.
The question is, what is a aggressive dog and non-aggressive dog? They're different on the leash versus the leash. And it's always going to be an argument. I don't have an aggressive dog.
Right, and that's,
Someone goes to eat another dog.
And, animal welfare is having other issues with that idea of what's aggressive and, so,
Look at Monday's video.
Yeah.
so this is just one issue in that whole dialogue about, what dogs are safe and where, and,
Do you get a lot of reports of dogs being injured in dog parks? I mean, do you guys get a lot of complaints about that?
I don't personally, and I don't know that, typically if it went to risk, I think we would hear about it or get IPRA requests, and those have not, to my knowledge, come in. So I think a lot of it is self-policing.
But that was another question. She called 311, didn't get any response.
Well, and so it's kind of a twofold question. It probably went to animal welfare because it was in a dog request, but if it were specific to a park and someone was making a claim against the city that the dog park itself wasn't safe, I'm sure those would go to both departments and both would have to respond to those requests. To my knowledge, we have not received any of those.
This 311 calls, I think, kind of depend on what department they're going to and what's going on in that department at that time. Some of them, sometimes I get good response to 311 calls, and sometimes I don't. But it's kind of surprising to me that she ended up talking to Mike Reardon, because what does he have to do with Parks and Rec?
Well, I filed a complaint with Rob Perry. You know who he is, right? He works for the mayor. And he referred it to his subordinate, Mr. Reardon, who oversees Parks and Recs.
Right, Mike Reardon is the COO, who is
now
our
okay.
director's direct supervisor.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's no longer at DMD. So we're continuing to try and address that issue.
Well, I'm going to still visit some of those parks just to see if I can catch something really out of the norm, other than, like John says, it's just.
And another thing that we're working on, kind of related to dog parks, is a multi-agency campaign on scooping the poop, both from a water quality initiative. If you get a strong rain, poo at City View Estates ends up in the river within a couple of hours. So we're working with the Water Authority, MAFCA, DMD, Animal Welfare, Clean Cities on a campaign, and it also affects dog health. If people aren't cleaning up in the dog parks, that's how parvo gets transmitted. So we're gonna try a few different approaches, you know, keep the river clean, keep your pets healthy, keep your kids healthy. No one likes to be playing soccer. So a multi-agency campaign and we're hoping that a component of that will be working with animal welfare to do some maybe hands-on education within the dog parks to talk about, you know, parvo and cleaning up after your dog, whether it be in the dog park or in the bosque or at your own home, but also to kind of address that aggressive animal issue. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping comes out of this Scoop the Poop campaign is some on-the-site educational components for the dog parks, you know, to get people where they live and, you know.
I think what's important about what Christina's bringing up with that campaign is that Parks and Rec has taken a leadership role in this, even though parks contribute a small portion of fecal coliforms that are found in the river. Most of the fecal coliforms are from birds, first off. Canine component is a lot smaller than that, but that's something that we have some involvement. We can take some control of that issue. And you know, more of the canine component comes from private yards than it does from the parks, but we still feel an obligation to help out with that and get involved. And so
I think the more we educate people that, you know, whether it's in your yard or the park, it ends up in the river, hopefully, you know, that can make an impact. But we definitely get complaints about, you know, my kid was playing soccer and, you know, slipped, or I go to the dog park and it's dirty, you know, I mean, so we're trying to address it from multi-directions to hopefully get people a little more educated and concerned.
The other thing I just had was for Jerron, when is that pruning class you're going to give?
That's going to be on the 17th in the morning, and it's a fairly short video segment, as I understand it. So what we're going to do is we'll bring in a couple of small trees that have some very obvious problems, and the idea is just to kind of engage the homeowner. You know, here's some pruning that you could do yourself, kind of a thing. Make it a little bit interactive.
Is it going to be videotaped? I mean, could we get?
Well, it's going to be done through KRQE.
KRQE's going to do it?
Yeah, yeah. So it's one of their spots.
But they don't save them. I was trying to find Bill Nordine's, so it's a live newscast and they don't record their morning shows. But we can see if Jen can get copies of those.
And you know, in all honesty, I think with the time allowed and the format, it's not going to be that informative of a class. It's going to be just kind of a brief overview. But one of the things as city forester that's on my plate is to provide education. So if there's a format or a venue that I could do that in that you're aware of, I'd be happy to. So.
Let's find that.
But we just want to, you know, let the public know that we have a lot of trees within our parks and we want to take care of them, and that, you know, trees are important to the overall city's health.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about why trees are beneficial and kind of lead in with that. So.
The last thing is just for you, Jane. Can you send an email out with the mayors and Lewis's at that tennis court thing and the schedule that we were talking about? There's Saturday at 10:30 somewhere.
Oh, that's the dog park.
Yeah, the dog
tennis
park.
already
the
happened.
dog park, but then there's a dedication of
That happened
already
last week.
happened.
Oh, it happened.
Yeah.
That's it then.
So let me raise one issue. One on the positive side, Columbus Park is a beautiful city park, but the tennis courts are getting a little shabby. Is that is there some kind of schedule where you go around and?
So unfortunately, those courts have been resurfaced a number of times. And I think the issue is the drainage and the soil underneath it. So we can go in and resurface them again, but it's, I mean, to fix it, we'd really have to rip them out and start over.
Oh, wow.
But we do have, I wouldn't say a regular resurfacing plan, but we go through and resurface tennis courts probably about every 8 to 10 years regular, you know, I mean, that's typically the life of a tennis court. I think the last time we did Columbus was probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, it looks like maybe the wet dampness of it has caused them to sort of.
Right, they puddle and then the
Yeah.
surface there comes up. And
I had one more comment before. I was, maybe John's been interested in this, but I was approached by the Pickleball Association.
Where old tennis players go to die.
Maybe more toward Gary but they had a whole list of wants and needs, and they probably, and I think there's some easy solutions on this, but they're looking for more indoor courts that they can play. You know, they have a pretty good justification that it is a growing sport with the aging population, that a lot of them are playing, I think, 500 per week. I'm not a pickleball player, I just talked to the association, but they're having problems with storage. They want to have, they're having storage problem. They're also having, what they would like to do is mark some courts for indoor, not permanently, just with tape. And they're looking for some sort of, I think they've actually done a presentation with City Council and done their due diligence of trying to get the use of our facilities with the city, with the community centers or some of the outdoor courts. But probably one of the biggest concerns that they have is we have nowhere to store our equipment, so they have to go all the way across town. People have to put it up, but if they had a storage place within a community center, and maybe they could mark their court size, not permanently, but just with tape, that would probably help their association. So was a request from Pickleball Association. Now, I don't know where you would take that, Gary.
Want me to answer it, or?
Yeah.
To other
Please, go ahead. You start and we'll join in.
So the pickleballers are very good at marketing themselves.
They are
Really familiar with them.
So we have,
time on their hands.
yes, we have restriped, I believe it's 8 different parks, so that you can play both tennis and pickleball on those.
Outdoors.
Outdoors.
Yeah, they're looking at indoor games.
Right. They were also able to get Councilor Harris to appropriate $1.6 million to pickleball at Manzano Mesa. So those courts will be in design in the next few weeks. We were waiting for the contract to be negotiated, and that has been completed. And they're looking at about 18 to 20 courts there, and that facility likely would have a storage component. In terms of the indoor facilities, Parks and Recreation doesn't typically manage indoor facilities. The community centers and senior centers are managed by 2 different departments, Family and Community Services and Senior Affairs. I know Senior Affairs in particular has been engaged with the pickleball community, and part of the reason that we're locating the outdoor courts there at Manzano Mesa is because there is the multi-gen center there, so that they have restrooms, they can hold, potlucks before, after, they can, have meetings along with having their events. So we're trying to kind of deal with it in 2 different ways. One is kind of the more pickup game, where you have 2 or 3 courts at like a Los Altos or somewhere, and so that they're spread throughout the city, as well as addressing the need for more of a competition type space at Manzano Mesa. In terms of indoor facilities, that really needs to be coordinated with departments that have those types of facilities.
Probably Senior Affairs.
Mm-hmm. And I know that Senior Affairs is interested in it, and we've actually talked about going in together on some pickleball courts at Valhalla Park, but they just haven't had the money to commit to that. But indoor space, I'm sure that they could accommodate. And we'd be happy to, have places where they have community centers or senior centers within our parks to have those discussions.
Right.
We're providing storage, can you stripe another court? Or can you stripe a court?
I'll let them know that.
Thank you, John. Is there any new business? I know we're missing some, there's vacant board member positions. We all know this. And is there any new business to come before the advisory board?
May I add one positive comment?
Always.
Is that possible? I did want to say I've attended Los Altos pool And I found it's in need of renovation, there's no doubt about that, but it is extremely well managed. It is polite, well-run, the lifeguards are responsible citizens, they use every part of that pool efficiently. People are respectful. It's just, you know, my observations with Los Altos pool was, it's about as efficient as you can get as far as management is concerned. So I was very pleased with that. But it does need renovation, as Christina has noted.
We are,
yeah.
So some of us, I'm going to do a little work for you, like I said, and I don't know who else will. Maybe some will, some won't. But
Councilor Harris is willing to put the money to fund the weed problem there, by the way, because I've already discussed this with him, just to let you know. So he's aware of the problem.
okay. I'm just thinking that maybe this is just a problem that's in different places, and I just like to see it for myself. But
Yeah.
When you send that email with that document to Jane, would you, I know, but in electronic format?
Yes.
Would you mind including a letter, separate letter to Aquatics?
Oh, sure.
Complimenting on that? They just
Absolutely.
work their tails off, and they never get to hear this stuff.
Yes.
And if we put it in writing,
Yes, and
I mean,
Charles, actually, I'll be happy to do that. And Charles has actually gone with another person who's concerned about the deterioration of the parks. They went out and did some videotaping. He's got a couple of them on YouTube. Would you like me to share those with you?
just send the link.
Okay.
Harrison, right? So if that's it, then without objection, do I have here I'd like to thank you, Jordan, for being, Joran. I haven't had to ask her how to spell it, sorry.
That's what you get when you have beatniks for parents.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Please come anytime you want. And we can put you right at the very beginning and get you on your way also.
Back to the trees.
Ms. Goodman, thank you for showing up and being
Thank
here
you.
as a guest.
This
Mr.
was
Harrison,
really,
thank you.
this was really pleasant. I've been to other meetings, board meetings with other entities, and this was, obviously there's a lot of people here that are very dedicated and committed to doing what's right. This is not just something to put on your resume to say, look what I've done, you know, as a volunteer. So I can tell there's a lot of positive and interested people in this that attend, and it's a pleasure to see that. Frankly.
Well,
I just wanted to
thanks.
say that.
Thank you very much.
Are you and Susan going to have a meeting in Miles?
Oh, thank you.